Confetti stitches, or individual or very small groups of stitches floating off by themselves in an otherwise unstitched area of fabric in a project, is one of the most difficult phenomena to deal with in a cross-stitch pattern. So it's not really a surprise that how to handle them is one of the most frequently asked questions in the comments of my videos and elsewhere on social media. So today, Nugget and I are going to teach you some ways to deal with them. Hi, I'm Ford, and welcome to Caterpillar Cross Stitch YouTube. I know I hate it when YouTubers yammer on instead of just getting straight to the topic, so I'm going to dive right in. If you promise to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment, I'd appreciate it. Now, confetti stitches are used for a number of different things in cross-stitch patterns. They may be used to represent confetti, hence the name. They kind of look like bits of confetti thrown up into the air. Or they often are used to represent stars or snowflakes in a pattern. So they have their uses, and oftentimes when they're called for, you can't really get away without them. So how to deal with them becomes a problem. Now, the first and most obvious thing to do would be just to stitch this one and then come over here and stitch this one, or here and then here. You know, what order you did them wouldn't matter too much. But that's called traveling or cross-country, where you'll just carry your thread across the back of the fabric and go from one stitch to the next until they're all done. And in some circumstances, that's actually fine. If there's a fairly low amount of contrast, say you're doing snowflakes on a light blue fabric, it probably won't be that big of a deal. But where it gets to really be a problem is when you have a high degree of contrast. If your thread contrasts a lot with your fabric, the places that you've carried your thread will become visible once you back your project on a piece of mat board or something else to display it. So that then kind of spoils the line, and it spoils the illusion of those snowflakes or those stars or whatever they are. Another issue can be found when we look at the back of the project. So you can see how long these return stitches, the stitches on the back of the project, are between them. And because the stitches are so long, it's really difficult to keep any tension in them. When we wash the project, the floss is going to stretch a little bit and the aida is going to shrink a little bit. So the tension that is in these loops here will go away, and there will no longer be any tension in our stitches on the front. Now, I've said many times on this channel that I only care about the back of my project insofar as it affects the front. So while I don't love the look of these long strands running across here, my real problem with them is that I can't keep any tension in them, and so my stitches are not going to look very neat on the front. And so for me, that's a problem. But for lots of people, that's fine. And if it's okay with you, that's great too. You just do this. You don't have to do anything special. If, however, you're like me and you like to try to make your stitches as tidy as possible, then obviously that's going to be a problem. So here are a few of my solutions for that problem. The first thing is that if you don't already know how, you're going to want to learn to do a loop start. Loop start is very simple. Instead of cutting two pieces of floss for your strands, you start with one piece of floss and you put both ends of it through the eye of your needle. So that makes up your two strands. So you have, instead of two cut ends here, you have a loop, or what would be better technically known as a bight, B-I-G-H-T. And essentially, we're just going to hitch our stitch, the first half of our stitch, onto the fabric. We do that by putting the needle through, pulling it down most of the way, and then bringing it back up. And as we do so, we put the needle through that bight. And that hitches it onto the fabric. Now we pull that little loop down to one of the corners of the stitch, and then it'll just go straight through to the back. So that gives us the first half of our stitch with an extremely tidy start. There are no ends to worry about there. And because that is so easy and so secure, starting with a loop start is going to be the basis of all of my techniques I'm going to share with you for dealing with confetti stitches. So master that loop start first. And to minimize waste, we're going to do each of these with a very short piece of floss, because due to the fact that we're using a loop start, we'll have to pretty much cut off and throw away whatever we don't use for the stitches. So I'm starting with a pretty short piece. And then how to do the second leg and finish it off is going to be a little bit different with the different techniques I'm going to show you here. So if we do the second half of that stitch, just as normal, crossing our X. Then we go to the back of our project. One of the biggest reasons that confetti stitches are difficult to deal with is that after having done only one stitch, there's not much thread back here for us to bury our needle under the way we would normally do. So the most low-tech and simplest way to handle the problem is to just kind of go back and forth a handful of times. We'll stick our needle under that thread, and then we'll kind of turn, and we'll go a different direction underneath one of the other ones. And we're just kind of building up enough friction here to hold our stitches in place. But honestly, it kind of starts to resemble a knot before too long. But it doesn't need very much in order to secure it. And so that's one way to secure a single confetti stitch. But I don't trust it super much to stay in place, which is why I usually will use one of a few different other techniques. So I'm going to again start my thread with a loop start. Then do the other half of my stitch. And then once again, I'm going to turn onto the back side of the project. And with this one, rather than just relying on the friction of the stitch against itself, I'm actually going to take advantage of the structure of the aida that I'm using. So if you look closely at the aida, and I've zoomed in a little bit to make that easier, you'll notice that between the holes that we usually use for stitching, there are actually 4 strands of the fabric fiber. And in each square, you've got 2 that go up and 2 that go down. And they form this kind of sub-weave that exists between the holes. And so we're going to take advantage of that structure in order to get some extra friction on our thread as we're burying it. So normally, I would just tuck my thread underneath the stitches that are on the back of the project here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dig just a little bit deeper. And you can see that my needle is actually going underneath those 2 strands of the aida. Normally this is something that you want to avoid because it makes it hard to remove the stitches. They'll be an inconsistent shape. But for burying your thread this way, it actually works pretty well. So I can pull my thread the rest of the way through there. And I will also then usually go back in the other direction, but only going under my stitches, not going through the weave of the aida on the second pass through. So that sharp turn that we've created there creates a lot of friction on the thread. So that will hold it a little bit more securely than just tucking it under itself a few times. So then I can go ahead and just snip that tail off. And it's not quite as bulky as going back and forth several times like we did with the previous stitch. But it still gives us a nice tidy stitch on the front. Now don't miss out on everything that's going on with Caterpillar Cross Stitch. Sign up for our email newsletter. You'll get notifications about upcoming retreats, stitch-alongs, that kind of stuff. Plus you'll get a free ebook with 10 free patterns in it worth £60 as soon as you sign up. So hit the link in the description or in the first pinned comment so that you don't miss out on that. But obviously that only works if you're working on aida. If you're working on linen or a higher count even weave, then you don't have that sub-weave to exploit. So that's where my next trick can come in handy. So just as before, we are going to start with a loop start here. And then we will complete our stitch and then move around to the back of the project. And this is where one of my favorite tools for cross-stitching will come in very handy, and that is fray check. I've been carrying mine around so much that the logo is basically worn off, but it's quite inexpensive, available at most craft stores, and there are a lot of uses for it during cross-stitching, especially when you're working with metallic floss. This makes all the difference in the world when working with metallic floss. Make sure you check out my video on the topic to see how it can help you. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bury my thread underneath the stitches in the same way that I normally would. And I'm going to make one additional pass from a different direction, just to give us some surface area here. So all I'm going to do is take a very small droplet of it. Now, do not do this over the top of your project like I am doing, because you probably will drip on it and you will be unhappy. But I wanted to do it where you could see. And then I'll just smear that tiny little fraction of a drop onto my stitches, and it will soak in and it will bind those fibers together of the stitch and the back part of the stitch so that it won't come undone. Now, this is especially useful if you are stitching on something practical, say an article of clothing or something like that, rather than something that's just going to be put in a frame and displayed. Because the likelihood of that stitch getting tension that will cause it to get messed up is way higher on something practical. So that's where fray check can come in really handy, because it doesn't dissolve in the wash or anything like that. Now that does take a couple minutes to dry, but I can work on other stitches in the area while that happens or something. But then once it does dry, it will be super, super secure. Now, I love making YouTube videos about cross stitch, but I can only cover one topic a week. So if you have a more pressing question or one of my answers doesn't work for you, being in a group like the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Facebook group can be super, super valuable. Make sure that you check that out and follow the Instagram so that you don't miss out on any of the amazing resources that the Caterpillar community has to offer. So that covers my top problems with the travel or cross-country method of dealing with confetti stitches, and my 3 favorite methods for making those stitches without creating those problems. What about you? Do you have a different technique that you use? Share it in the comments. But that is all I have for you this week. I do want to thank you so much for watching. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford. This is Nugget, and I'll see you next week.